Today, I decided I want to sleep in luxury. So I'm getting rid of my old headboard and replacing it with this one-of-one artisanal Bob the Builder style special, as I do with everything. And as you can tell by the proportions, I'm going from just barely fits the width of the bed to who needs walls anyway. So let's make some nice things. So first things first, what I'm using for this project is plywood for the back, batting, lead strips, velvet material for the front, upholstery tack strips, and maplankanyana for the legs and some structural rigidity. And the basic design is simply this: an oversized body, 3 legs to support the frame, 2 hooks for security purposes, and LED strips for backlighting because I'm not about to get side lamps for anything. So now that the basics of the design is out the way, what I started with is I started marking the lines where the legs will go, where the border on the top is, essentially marking out the boundary of it along the sides and on the top. After that, I pulled out the timber to mark the cuts for the legs because in terms of height, I already knew how tall I wanted it to be overall, which is essentially my height, just a fraction under, but essentially my height. So after cutting the uprights, what I then did is that I cut the cross beams and then I drilled holes that are going to be used later on for the pronged T-nuts and bolts. And I gave those T-nuts a good hammering so they stay nice and flush on the surface. Now the headboard itself is massive, so on the front I kept it simple with just 5 oversized panels, and how I lay them is very simple. The first thing I did is staple the fabric beauty side down to the plywood, and this is done so that the excess material goes under the foam and not on top, and so that it doesn't protrude on the gaps. And once I do that, on the section that the panel is going on, I use spray adhesive in that section, as well as on the foam itself, and put it onto that section. And then place the foam on the panel, align it, and make sure that is within the boundaries of the line. Next thing that I need to do per panel is add the batting, and this is essentially to make it soft. The cushion is soft, but cushion on material sometimes, there's a little bit too hard edges, so batting adds just a little layer of softness and adds to that plush feeling that, you touch it and then you can feel, now man, who soft man, kuna soft life here. And once that's done, I started then pulling the fabric and then stapling that onto the plywood. And in terms of how much I pull, is pretty much determined by listen, the only advice I can really give as to how tight it needs to be is you just have to play it by touch. It has to feel right, not too tight, not too loose, but as you put your hand over it, you just need to feel right. When you touch it, it needs to feel nice. And trust me when I say this, for upholstery there's never too much staples, because you want to make sure that your lines come out crisp. You want to make sure that your lines come out crisp, and then there's no funny bumps and whatnot, so there's never too much. And once you're happy with your result, you can now trim the excess of the material and get started on the next section. At this point, it's pretty much a rinse and repeat type thing. You do it, on to the next one, and yeah. The end panels themselves were a bit more complicated, I'd say, because over and above the basics that you do with the others, what you also want to do is wrap the foam slightly around the corner so that even if you hit your head on a corner for whatever reason, it's still soft and there's no damage that you take. And what you see me do here is use state-of-the-art measuring techniques to make sure that I get an even panel at the end, because like I said, this one wraps around, so you have to make sure that you pull it and give it the right pressure all around. And the only way to sort of measure that is to have a physical stop or physical sort of element that tells you whether you're pulling too much or too little. And like I said, the stapling for this is on the back, and this is where planning and precision matters most, because this is essentially the finishing part of it, and this is what makes it look good on the front. Now, once the fabric bit was done, it was now time to attach the legs. And to do this, the first thing that I needed to do was sort of trim the excess material along the whole border, because that otherwise it gets in the way. So just trim it down to where you need it to be and take it from there. And the next thing I did, which I've never really seen on any headboard anyway, is I made these little pillows for the back part. And the whole purpose of this is that I can't have this headboard digging onto the wall and, you know, causing damage. You know what I mean? I mean, look at this. You know, it doesn't make sense that a headboard is now on the wall and scratching and whatnot. So the pillows made sure that, you know, it's going to be silent all the time. And the basic idea with this is that the bolts that hold the legs go through the pillows, through the legs, and latch onto the T-nuts that went into the front earlier. The next thing to go in are the ledge strips, and I put them in this diffuser around the legs and equal spacing from the top to the sides. And these last pieces of timber that you see me putting in here are actually the anchor points for the round eye hooks that I'm installing. Like I said, for safety hooks. And with a little cleaning before I put back the new headboard. Make sure I install it equal distance from the left to right, because it needs to be centered, you know, and feng shui. Yeah. And with that, here it is. This, and I love everything about this project: the size, the material, the safety hooks, the LED lights. I mean, every little thing. The light, for example, it allows me to do stuff like this. If I want to read, I'll have a white light. If I want to, set this different mood, I'll have a little red, maybe a little green, a little blue. It's just different, and all with this cheap nyana LED system, nothing too fancy, but it allows me to sort of have that under control and have it diffused. And with this, I don't have to walk to the light switch. So with that, if you'd like to see more creative DIY videos, have a look at some of my other projects. Yeah, let's enjoy nice things.